Now, what I don't want to say is that anything I said in my first impressions video about the Honor 8 Pro was wrong, but that I was maybe a little bit too quick calling it the better Mate 9 just yet. And that has nothing to do with the fact that anything in my experience has changed since then, but because I got the Mate 9 in here once again for the detailed comparison between these two. And in that one, I want to find out which one is the best phablet for you. But that's up for another video. Today, Honor 8 Pro. Let's start off with the design and build. I personally still think it looks very nice, very elegant, very beautiful, but a few people seem to have a problem with the fact that it looks too much like an iPhone 7 Plus. I personally don't really know, I don't really care, but what I wanna tell you is that I think the phone is relatively compact with quite small bezels, and with the thin design it actually is quite easy to grip onto, but maybe not so secure, because after all the back is a little bit more on the slippery side. The good thing is that the sides are quite grippy to hold on to, and all along with the curve here a little bit, it is actually very comfortable to hold on phone. What I would have personally maybe wished for though is a little bit of a subtle curve on the back, because that one makes phones, especially bigger ones, easier to hold on to. But either way, one and usability will be quite hard. Anyways, the build quality though is superb, super rugged, super sturdy, absolutely great here. The fingerprint reader, in my opinion, is a little bit high, because if I usually hold it like this with the pinky supporting the phone, I almost pretty much can't reach it, so I have to slightly readjust. But then you get pretty much one of the best fingerprint readers out there on the market. As you can see, it reacts very well, very fast, and very reliable, so I absolutely like that. Of course, we have the dual camera here along with the flash. On the top we can see the IR blaster, also the microphone. On the left side, SD card and SIM card tray. On the bottom, USB Type-C, speaker on the right, and microphone and headphone jack on the left. Otherwise, in terms of buttons, they are easy to reach, quite convenient, and they sound absolutely nice. Very nice tactile and audio feedback. We have a notification LED here in the earpiece on the right side. We have, as we can already see, software buttons. So that's it. What is also quite nice is that we have a little bit of some curve here, so like 2.5D glass. So very nice phone, looks great, very nicely built. I could not say anything else to tell you how great this phone is. And that's why I would say let's go into the display. We have a Quad HD 5.7-inch IPS display. What we can change in the settings is the color temperature. I set mine actually to a little bit cold just because I preferred it that way. But otherwise I have to say viewing angles, absolutely stable. Maximum brightness is also very good. The white point was set, like I said, a little bit too warm just for what I wanted this time. The blacks though very solid, the normal amount of IPS glow. And I still think that Huawei knows to calibrate, or Honor in this case, displays very, very nicely, because they are just ever so slightly more satisfyingly saturated, so maybe not 100% accurate, which I don't think any phone really is on the market. So very accurate still in some way compared to other phones. Very enjoyable, absolutely a worthy flagship display. Absolutely no problems here, especially since it is a very also sharp one and made for VR in mind. Otherwise, let's get into the speaker. I've already said it in my first impressions video and things are still the same. It is very loud, actually quite nice, so definitely loud enough, but it still tends to have the same issue. Without reflecting, it sounds ever so slightly muffled, but still absolutely okay balanced I would say. But with reflection, then it gets just a little bit too harsh on the highs, and then you notice that a little bit of depth and a little bit of warmer sound is missing, because it's not thin, but it's a little bit more flat, as I would have wished for. A little bit more warmth would have been nice. In terms of the headphone jack, I still have to say the same as on pretty much every Huawei phone. It's okay, it's decent, it's average. I would wish for more, but it is what it is. Otherwise, let's get into the performance. Let's kill off all the apps, and you have already maybe seen 6 gigs of RAM. And that is definitely the highlight, because I have to say, if an app once has been loaded, it is pretty much in the RAM all the time. And it is, I have to just say that, superb when it comes to multitasking. This is pretty much one of the best phones, because I've seen other phones with 6 gigabytes already, but none of them really made me notice the 6 gigabytes so much. And this is absolutely great. Of course, if we take a second to wait for the site to render, we will see that we also get an absolute great, super smooth scrolling experience. There's also not a lot of motion blur, which is nice to see for an IPS display. So browsing experience absolutely on the highest flagship level. Otherwise, in terms of apps, as you can see, super nice, buttery smooth, it pretty much doesn't get any better. Very nice. It's a very responsive phone. The only thing where I've noticed it's maybe not always so responsive is in SwiftKey, because if I use SwiftKey, sometimes it doesn't seem to be able to keep up in terms of the digitizer. It's just not always 100% reliable. So I've noticed that on a few Huawei phones by now, so maybe they should improve their digitizers, because in the back they were actually amongst the very best ones here. But still, like I said, multitasking is absolutely top-notch. You can do everything so well. It is a top-notch performer, absolutely great experience, super smooth, very reliable, doesn't really get warm in normal use, and the multitasking is absolutely superb. And the whole thing continues on with games, because I could play games with very high frame rates very nicely. Yes, sometimes you notice a few more frame drops, maybe due to the higher resolution than some other devices, but it gets playable at all times very nicely, absolutely enjoyable, great here. Yes, it gets noticeably warm because I guess due to the phone being a little bit more on the thinner side, it didn't really seem to throttle or anything there like that, but it is noticeable, not an issue though, and I think you can play games without any issues for quite a long time. And that's why I would say let's get into the battery. Full charge from 5 to 100% takes about 2 hours and 20 if I'm not wrong. If not, the values will correct me. But what I have to say is, so far from what I got, it doesn't support Huawei's quick charge. I will try this with the charger of the Mate 9 just to be sure, so check my comparison for that, because the Mate 9 actually has a bigger charger. So still okay though, because after all, for a 4000 mAh battery, this is absolutely okay. What was maybe not all that impressive was 13% for an hour of YouTube. I've seen this already better, but it is what it is. But once we get to the battery life itself, I have to say this is still very good, because I got about 4.5 to maybe even 5 hours of mobile data use. I would say 5.5 to 6 on a mix, and about 6.5 on average on Wi-Fi only, and that is absolutely respectable, not a problem. It is not quite on a Mate 9 level, but I also have to say what I have still an issue with EMUI is the flaky standby rate. I actually fixed my issue with having a very bad one, but it's still amongst the slightly weaker ones after all. So, in terms of software, what we still have is here the quick shortcuts that I think no one actually ever uses. Other than that, we have the quick settings here. They can be rearranged, of course. We have, as we can see here, the launcher with the app drawer in case you want to use that, but you can even disable that one in case you want to. Otherwise, the new theming engine, or I would say by now improved theming engine, allows to actually theme everything. So also the settings and quick settings. This is something that I personally like to see. We still, of course, have floating dock in case you want to use that, which pretty much gives you here the button instead of the on-screen buttons. Not something I personally use, but okay. In terms of motion control, what I like is that we have knuckle gestures. So you can quick and easily, for example, launch the split screen mode that we have now since we have Nougat, to launch 2 apps at the same time. And we have a few more. For example, you can draw something like that, and then you can see launch apps from that. That is nice, absolutely great. Of course, we have smart cover, some other things. What we have as well is, for example, navigation keys. We can rearrange those. We can add one button to pull down the notification shade and so on. In terms of sound, the only thing that we have is headset DTS, which I would actually say leave it off, because I think it sounded better without. Other than that, you get the pretty much typical stuff from EMUI. If you have ever used any EMUI 5 device, you know what to expect. And even if you've used a 4.1, you get kind of the feel, because yes, the UI has changed and improved in terms of design, but underneath it's still the good old, or maybe not that good. That's something that you have to decide. EMUI. That's what I would say. Let's check the camera. In terms of selfies, all I can say is that, as you can see here, pictures don't always look that sharp. That is pretty much my only complaint, because if you get a little bit further away, then it's sharper, and if you even get further away, it gets better, but it never seems 100% in focus, because it doesn't seem to autofocus with the front-facing camera. A few cams do this by now, so that's a little bit disappointing, and that's why I will give it just decent when it comes to selfies, because otherwise the rest would have been fine. And if I maybe get something wrong here, you can correct me. Otherwise, here a picture with the flash, and without, as you can see, for some reason even brighter, which is a little bit weird. But I have to say, actually the low light capabilities are very good, because it's mostly sharp. Yes, here it gets a little bit slow in terms of shutter speeds, and autofocus isn't all that fast, but still, absolutely nice job. Outside though, here is where the camera definitely shines, because as you can see, very sharp, very nice, contrasty pictures. This is something that especially surprised me compared to the Mate 9, which I will compare it with when I did my pictures, because very nice, very well working autofocus, shutter times are great. I really like the high dynamic range, great pictures, very reliable camera, absolutely enjoyable. I really like that. So Really great outcomes. And as you can see, here's some nice little details are all there. And here is, for example, one thing that is something of the dual camera. If you use, for example, the software bokeh mode, you can see you can blur out things. This may be not the best example because it doesn't always work 100% right, but if you get the feel for it, for example, you can get some really nice pictures, and it's definitely a nice feature, gotta say. Of course, landscape pictures work out very well, so yeah, definitely great for pictures. For videos, as you can see here with the 4K camera, absolutely nice because very smooth and pretty much no artifacting in the sun, which means it uses quite a high bitrate. Also, autofocus works very reliable, very subtle, nice pictures, very smooth, very sharp, very detailed. The autofocus works well. Of course, we don't have optical image stabilization, so it gets a little bit shaky, but you shouldn't really bother too much about it because I still think that video looks great. If you check 1080p 60, I just have to say it's maybe not worth bothering about the 60 frames because that is nice to have, but the pictures just get so much noticeably more, let's say, less sharp, that I don't think it's quite worth it. But maybe that's just me, something that you have to decide. And that's why I would already say, let's get into the pros and cons. I want to start off with the very high build quality. This has been just done so nicely. It is also very relatively thin and compact, has a very good fingerprint reader, and the display is just great in my opinion. There are maybe a few better ones out there still, but absolutely flagship level. The speaker is also very good, even though maybe just good because it is very good in terms of loudness. Great performance, absolutely, with great gaming performance as well. And the multitasking is absolutely superb. We had very good battery life, good software. The selfie cam was decent. For photos, it was definitely great, even though maybe low light was just very good. But then again, great video cam. On the negative side, or let's say just not that great side, we have a little bit of a flat and slippery device. I would have wished for an actual curve on the back, makes it easier to hold on to. Fingerprint reader, in my opinion, is placed quite high, at least for someone with short fingers. Occasionally slow screen response, but mostly just in swiftly noticeable. The speaker is maybe not on par with the otherwise really high qualities of this phone. We have an average headphone jack, and the standby drain could be better. But this would have been already it, so let's get into the final conclusion. For a price of $550, recommendable? Yes, absolutely, because as you have seen, all the qualities are very high. So where's my issue? My issue is that I kind of hoped for this phone to be $499, which I think it will get over time, especially on flash sales, maybe with some added goodies. Because by now, the Mate 9 has become already a little bit cheaper. It's right about the $570 so far right now. So it's very close, and that's why the competition to its bigger mother company phone is actually there, where you still have some better qualities, like for example the speaker. I still think actually the display looks even better, but actually when it comes to the camera, I think this one will win, but we will see that in the full comparison. But I still have to say, very great phone, nice to hold on to. Of course, design comes up to personal preference, but it doesn't really tank in any department. Yes, battery life maybe is something that I would have wished for to be even better, just because we see the comparison, and for a big phablet you expect even more so. But it gets me through the day, and it should get most people through the day, especially with moderate use, maybe even 2 days. So overall, they did a great job. If I check what's not that great, yeah, nothing really worth to be a deal breaker. So absolutely recommendable. And once the price maybe drops a little bit, even better. But competition is there, and that's why I just have to point out once again the Mate 9. So definitely check out the comparison before you decide to go for one or the other, because this one will be actually more than interesting. Because at first I said yes, the Honor is better, then I got the Mate 9 and I found a few things that I like as well. So it will be very, very close after all. So this would have been it. I hope you liked it. Otherwise, thumbs up, maybe subscription, and I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.